Of course, no one can forget that fateful day 9 years ago when Americans came under attack. In New York, where the Twin Towers came crashing down, there's long been a debate about what to do at Ground Zero. Now, a new debate is raging, one that involves building a mosque and Muslim cultural center just 2 blocks from the site of the attack. One side, represented here today by attorney Tariq El-Shabazz, says opposing the mosque is intolerant and prejudicial, while another, represented by conservative writer and activist Tom Atkins, argues it's a blatant move to disrespect grieving Americans. We want to know what you think, and we'll give you the opportunity to tell us as It's Your Call continues. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. It's a very sensitive issue. Tariq, why do you think that it's proper for a mosque and a cultural center to be built at this particular location?
Well, it's not a matter of particular location. It's a matter of United States citizens wanting to build a particular project at a particular location, having the same constitutional rights as anyone else. Now, we have to understand that this is not as a result of disrespectful to those individuals that have lost their loved ones, because there were other loved ones in there as well that are related to other individuals that may have been Muslim, that people believe were Muslim. So it's not a matter of that, but it's a matter of sending a message to those individuals that try to terrorize in the name of a particular religion in this country, that we're intolerant to that and we stand for something other than that.
Tom, do you think it's a different message that's being sent if in fact it's built there?
Yes, and not only that, Muslims around the world understand this message. For thousands and thousands of years, the Muslim history has been to conquer an area, find the most important or iconic location, and build a mosque there, and sending the message to the people locally: we are now in control, we are the people you should now be paying attention to, we now run your life. And most of the conversions, of course, happen at the point of a sword. So here in this situation, you have the most hallowed ground in recent American history, where 3,000 Americans died, and you have a large building which is going to cast a shadow every day on the gravesite of 3,000 Americans died, and 5 times a day you get to hear the call to prayer.
And they should hear that call to prayer, because they should come pray. That's the first thing. Secondly, there was no greater pillage of individuals than the Crusaders, who went around by sword trying to spread Christianity. That's the second thing. The third thing is this: this is not put there. First of all, it's not a mosque. It's a cultural center with a musalla in it, which is a prayer area, which is different. This is not put there to cast a shadow on anyone who had lost their life at that particular time, because in fact, what happened that day wasn't Islam. It was against Islam. That's the third thing. The fourth thing is this: there's a Manhattan masjid. It's called Masjid Manhattan. That is closer in proximity to that 9/11 Ground Zero indication or location than, in fact, this particular cultural center that is supposed to be there and built to invite people to understand Islam.
Is that center that you spoke of already in existence, and it's already been there?
Already been there.
Tom, is it the fact that there's a creation of a center? Is that the part that rubs people the wrong way?
No, I think the most important thing is the insensitivity. Here you have this hallowed ground, which is going to be every day there'll be daily reminders of how it happened and who did it. Now I want to agree with Tariq on something very important. You said something that the Christian Crusaders did the same thing. And what happened inside the Christian movement was the Christians said, no longer will we tolerate this sort of thing. And the moderate Christians revolted against the crazy, bloodthirsty Christians. That's what we need. We need good men. Like, I've met you. You're a good man. And there's millions of good men and good women like you in the Muslim faith. We need you to step forward, stop these people, because we can't do it.
But you know, the greatest thing about his example is that the greatest example to Islam is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And he was an individual that set structured and rules. For example, the particular lands that he indicate were conquered, the Muslims went in their lands, and when those individuals were invited to Islam, 1, 2, they were invited to teach the Muslims who were unable to read at that particular time, and at that time they were allowed to live freely. They were allowed to live in that area freely, and it's most important to understand, live in that area freely and practice their religion, which is different than Islam. This is a part of the history that people are not talking about with respect to this particular prophet.
You don't see it being insensitive to those who lost loved ones to build this center at this particular spot?
No more insensitive than building a church near the federal house that was bombed in Oklahoma City bombing by Timothy McVeigh. No more insensitive than building something near an abortion clinic where somebody in the name of Christianity bombed the abortion clinic and shoot and kill a doctor, but you can build a memorial or a Christian memorial around there. No, not at all.
Hold on one second, Tom. I do want to invite our viewers to be part of our conversation, because obviously this is a debate that has two very distinct sides. I'd like to know which side you're on, so you can email me with your thoughts at lynn@lynndoyle.net. We put the question out there on Facebook. We've been showing some of the responses throughout the show that we've got. It was an enormous response to the question of whether or not a mosque or a cultural center should be built at this particular location. If you'd like to tell us what you think, here are some questions. Do you think it should be built? Is it disrespectful, or do you think it would actually encourage tolerance? Is that what the United States is all about, religious freedom? If you want to tell us what you think, go ahead and email me. We do have some telephone calls, though, that have come in as a result. Judy is now joining us. Judy, thank you for being with us.
Hi, Lynn. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I understand that you experienced a loss on September 11th.
Yes, I did. I lost my son Joshua, who was 23 years old.
Well, of course, our condolences to you on that loss. When you hear about this debate that there could be a cultural center built 2 blocks from Ground Zero where your son died, what do you think?
Well, I think we have to clear up that this is not just a little cultural center. This is a $100 million project, which is going to be 25 stories high, that it has been bought for $5 million, where we have a New York developer, Kevin Glodick, that offered $18 million in 2007 with inked purchase agreement and keys to the existing buildings from the Pomerantz family,
right,
who then let this source disappear because they went silent, and then turned around and sold it at a terrible loss. And there are questions as to how much money went under the table, and were they trying to avoid some taxes.
Do you find this insensitive to your loss?
It beyond insensitive, and I think we have a good parallel. When the Carmelite nuns requested to build a convent in a dilapidated building at Auschwitz, the Nazi death camp, Pope John Paul II very beautifully stated that he recognized that having the right to do something does not mean it's the right thing to do, and told them to build the convent elsewhere. It was insensitive. I find it extremely hurtful. I find the imam who is requesting this is blame the victim. The United States is at fault. Everything about this I find distasteful and inappropriate. It's just not the right place.
All right, Judy, thank you very much for sharing your opinion on this topic. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Lynn.
Sure
I appreciate the time.
I hope your family is well. Tom, there's been some debate when discussing this issue that the United States is built on the premise of religious freedom and tolerance, and that all religions are welcome to practice here. Doesn't it go against the face of the Constitution and what we all stand for by saying, no, you can't build this here?
Sure, you're balancing things out. You're balancing the sensitivities in the history of your country versus the rights of people. All rights are not universal and pure. You have limits to your rights. This, to me, makes as much sense as building a Japanese cultural center 2 blocks from, the Arizona in Pearl Harbor. It does not make sense. There are places you would not do these things.
Well,
and the reason why is because it's insensitive to the people who have died, people who are murdered, and then people who sacrifice their lives essentially for freedom.
Will you touch on that very quickly before I take our next call? Because it's been compared to Pearl Harbor as though a Japanese cultural center being put there.
It clearly isn't Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was a particular attack that was sanctioned by a country. Here we have some rogue individuals in the name of Islam do an un-Islamic act and tear down a building. That's totally different.
So you don't see it as a comparison.
There's no parallels.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick call.